All right, welcome to another episode of Unboxing. No, not quite. The boys are back together again. That's great. We wanted to do this video for quite a while, but for various reasons we couldn't. So now we're able to do it. It's the Hegel H190V versus the Hegel 400. Now we did the H400 recently, so whoever's doing the editing can drop the link in the description box below. So essentially, sibling rivalry, the H190V versus the 400. Both are brand new items. The H190V came out fairly recently. It was essentially an upgraded version of the original H190. It includes a phono stage and apparently Bent, the founder and chief designer, also improved the power supply. So anyway, that's that. And then of course the H400, which we did a review on. The system, let me go into the details. The H190V is $4,200 US, $48.99 Canadian. The H400 is $69.95 US and it's $83.95 Canadian. The system that we used, or at least I used, was the Sonus Faber Sonetto 8G2. It's the top of the line in the Sonetto series. I had it connected Ethernet directly into either of the integrated amps. I also used the Eversolo A8 XLR output. So in other words, I used the internal DAC. And that was the system that we used. Now the power ratings, the 190 is 150 watts per channel, and the 400 is 250 watts per channel. They both claim to have 4,000 damping factor, which is very high. Okay, who wants to start?
I will.
Okay.
Okay, so anytime I'm doing a comparison, I always set up the decibel, the loudness, to between 80 to 85. Kind of loud, but not overly loud. So I try and balance it out to make sure that everything is level doing the comparison. Started off with the 190. One of my favorite tracks to go to, it's Bolero by Adam Ben Ezra, and he's a cello player. It's a very beautiful song. It's done by him. It's a cover. It's an old song, but he decided to, well, go ahead and do it. You could hear the strings with this on this track, and the bass and the other percussion instruments coming out, and it was, to me, a very good reproduction. I would think I would call this one of audiophile grade recordings, as well as most of his other tracks on this album as well. But this song is my standout on his album. Then I played 3 tracks, well, more than 3 tracks, but 3 tracks which are notable, which I would express here. Another track I played was The Last Tango in Paris by 101 Strings Orchestra. It's instrumental. I somewhat tend to focus on instrumentals or female vocals, but in this case I went for instrumental here. A lot of strings. I find that listening to violins are such a romantic instrument. So I played this track, and it's a track from a movie, and I just think the reproduction of it was fantastic. The strings, I love listening to strings, so this really brought out the reproduction with the Sonus Faber Sonetto 8 speakers. Really beautiful. Another track I played after that was a vocal by Melody Gardot, Over the Rainbow, which is a cover I think from Judy Garland did the original song from a movie.
The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, The Wizard of Oz. Yeah,
The Wizard of Oz.
just
a movie.
Just a movie. Yeah, well, it's been a popular movie from many moons ago. But yeah, this track, Melody Gardot has a wonderful, beautiful, smooth voice, which I love. It has also deep bass in the track, which the 190V really brought out with the Sonus Faber there. Instruments were very, very clean. This is, I would call, another audiophile track. Then I switched over to the 400 and playing back these specific songs, and wow, there was a wow factor. The bass was much more rich, focused, a lot of oomph. Every track which I played was more, even matching with the volume. So you know that with the 400, it has just that much more power, and it brought out much more of each of the individual songs over the 190V. And the 190V is not a slouch. So, but with the extra wattage, 100 watts per channel extra, it's 250 watts per channel versus 150. You could hear a difference. You could feel the difference. As a matter of fact, you could hear the ceiling, the what do you call it?
Ceiling tiles.
The ceiling tiles vibrating with the 400 at the same level versus the 150. So, yeah, I'll give my some recommendation at the end. Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
My first track is that one right there. King Crimson, Discipline. I believe the album is Discipline as well. King Crimson is very eclectic. No two albums are alike. They're very different from each decade. They kind of reinvent themselves. This is their what I believe is their best period. This is the early 80s period. This is when Adrian Belew was in the band and Tony Levin was in the band. They would go on to play with everyone, or had played with a lot of people by this time as well. This song, King Crimson, so no vocals in this track. This song, I believe, is two guitars that are constantly changing time signatures. So they're kind of just weaving in and out of each other. They have very similar tones. So in a lot of systems, these guitars kind of get muddled together and you can't really hear the differences between them. The 190 did quite well. It really did. There's a transparency in Hegel products, and the 190 was no slouch. But something came alive when it was played through the 400. There seemed to be a little bit more depth between the two guitars, and this extra depth helped with the articulation of these two guitars, because a lot of times when they're moving in and out each other in terms of time signature, they get kind of muddy. It's hard to hear the differences, but on the 400 you definitely could hear that there was an articulation between the two. My next track is from a Rolling Stones live album, and the band is not the Rolling Stones. So in 1968, the Rolling Stones did a live concert and they invited their friends. It was called the Rolling Stones Rock and Roll Circus. I believe it's 1968. Lennon and Yoko were there, Eric Clapton was there, I think Marianne Faithfull was there, possibly Jethro Tull was there, and they all got like 10 minutes to perform a few songs. The Who was there as well. So this is pre-Tommy, but Pete Townsend is already, he's already kind of doing little mini rock operas. So they did a track called A Quick One While He's Away, which is a 7 or 8 minute track. The rumor was that the Who's performance was so good that the Rolling Stones said, we're not going to release this album. And they didn't. It wasn't released for about 30 years. And actually the Stones' performance is actually pretty good. But the Who's performance is very, 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 very good. Very, very energetic, live off the floor, no overdubs. It's because it's the Who and because it's just a bombastic track, things can get a little hidden. Sometimes the drums don't come through quite a bit, as busy as Keith Moon is. Sometimes the bass is buried a little bit. The difference between the 190 and the 400, again, the 190 does very, very well. There's nothing wrong with it at all. But on the 400, let me see my notes. On the 400, there definitely seemed to be a little bit more extension in low ends. That was interesting to me because I've been listening to these songs for a long time and hearing a little bit more out of the 400 just in terms of the low frequency extension. I felt I heard more on the sonettos. And as well, the bass, both the instrument and the frequency, was more defined on the 400, and it allowed the individual notes to come through a little bit more clearly. And as well, just a little bit difference in terms of how fast I thought the bass was. So in that regard, the 400 really is doing very, very well. And my last track as well is another Who track. It's from Who's Next. It's called Going Mobile. This is an interesting track because a lot of the Who tracks, what you're hearing on the album is the first or second take. That's kind of who they were. That's probably when they were at their best. So this track is predominantly acoustic guitar, drums, and bass. The vocals are overdubbed, and there is an electric guitar and a synthesizer, ARP synthesizer that was overdubbed as well. But for the most part, which is great performance, is Keith Moon playing bombastically to Pete Townshend's acoustic guitar.
Does he know how to play any other way?
No, and you know what? And as well, I'm the biggest Who fan. I love the Who. I don't think there's any other musician that I can think of where they just let the mistakes happen and flow with it and leave them on the record. On every record, there's multiple Keith Moon. He's the world's best terrible drummer. There's a reason why a lot of people looked up to him, but it's amazing how awful he was at times. And I know a lot of it had to do with but still. Anyway, this track is Keith Moon essentially playing to Pete Townshend's acoustic guitar. And it's amazing to hear how much energy those two have together. Like Keith Moon playing off like rarely a drummer would not go crazy next to an acoustic guitar. But there's just this energy there. And I felt that on the 400, there was just something a little bit more dynamic that came out in the performance, and it just seemed to breathe a little bit more and let the energy flow with a little bit more translucency. Like it was a little bit more effortless than the 190. Yeah. And
okay.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like the three of us agree, and again, I want to underline for new viewers who don't know, we don't share our notes. We all listen independently, and then we get together one morning and we do this video. So I have no idea what these guys like or dislike and what they're about to say, but as I'm looking at my notes, I'm thinking I'm just going to parrot what both of them said. So I want to at this point underline something that may now seem not so obvious. If you listen to just Lewis and Mike, you would think the poor H190 is being hit on. You know, nobody likes the H190. And as a matter of fact, when I was listening and I looked at my notes, I thought, oh shoot, that's what it's going to come across. Yeah. So let me be very clear. the H190, in my opinion, is truly a star in the sub $5,000 category in Canada. I can't think of anything else I would personally buy. It's really, really good. And that was the H190. The H190V is a little bit better again, and that's based on oral memory. I've not compared the original H190 to the H190V, but a number of internet reviewers and online reviewers have indicated that there seems to be an improvement. All I can tell you is just based on the 190V, it's a fantastic integrated amp. It's really, really, really good. When I first listened to it, I was reminded why I like Hegel so much. You know, that it can do so well. I guess about a year ago, so up until about a year ago, Parasound was available in Canada, and then Parasound decided to stop distribution in Canada. I'm not entirely sure why, but a number of you had written to me saying, how come you guys don't talk about Parasound so much? You talked a little bit about it and you generally like it, but why don't you review all the other Parasound pieces? Well, here's why. As a general rule, the Hegel was better. The Parasound offered a lot more options. You had more preamps, you had more amplifiers, you had amplifiers in the price ranges that Hegel didn't have. You had all kinds of things that, especially on a budget, the Parasound did better. But in terms of products that were in the same price range, I much preferred the Hegel overall. And that's why we really didn't talk very much about the Parasound, because it just, to me, didn't do quite as well. So when I listened to the 190V, I was immediately brought back to the memories of why I really like the Hegel. So you hook it up to any of the Magnepans, and the Magnepan sings beautifully. You hook it up to any speaker. We were playing the MoFi 888s, and you know, with one or two exceptions like Victor, who didn't care for it. Victor's a detail freak, though. Let's be clear. But I mean, the 888s were pounding the store. With the 190, I mean, the store was, because this speaker, you know, it's not that big, but it sounds big. It sounds like a Klipschorn with bass, like serious bass. So I was really impressed. And then I connected the 400, and it's like, oh, wow. As Louis said, wow. It was, to me, even bigger, even more of everything I loved about the 190, just more. And it just took it to the next level for me, to the point where when I went back to the 190, I was disappointed. And again, I want to underline, I shouldn't be. The 190 is absolutely superb, but the 400 is, in my estimation, quite a bit better. I'm going to actually, at this point, ask the boys, if you were to somehow quantify the difference, would you say that the 400 was just a little bit better or substantially better in your opinion? Like, what would you say? And that's without us sharing notes.
Less than substantial, more than a little bit.
Okay. And Louis,
I agree with Mike's summation there. What I find with adjusting the volumes to be the same, the bass output on the 400 was much more than the 190. And the 190 is no slouch. Yeah. It just had so much more, and the control, even though they do have the same damping factor, the control to me was better on the MoFi as well as the Sonetta 8s. The bass control, because a lot of people don't know, and they just say a damping factor and they don't realize what a damping factor is. It is how the ability of the amplifier to control the woofer movement. What is good is that if you do have a high damping factor, you should not have a sealed speaker, because it's just going to control the thing, the woofer a bit too much. The damping factor works really well. High damping factor works really well with ported speakers. So that's just a little extra for people out there.
Yeah. So for me, and it's going to sound odd, but I think that the difference is more than a little bit. It's actually quite substantial. And in fact, in my notes, I made it clear, it's not a little bit of money. We're talking about $7,000 US versus $4,200. So it's $2,800 US more. It's a lot of money. But for me, if you could afford it, absolutely 100% do it. It's not about whether or not it's in our benefit. Most of you watching will never buy from us because we're so far away from each other. So there's no benefit to us whether or not you buy the 400. But in my opinion, if you get a chance to compare the two, please do and see for yourself. If the dollars are there, absolutely do the 400. And I think there's also another reason. The 400 incorporates a lot of the updated technology that came down from the 600, whereas I suspect, and I could be wrong, I don't know this, I haven't spoken to Hegel about this, I suspect that the 190V was essentially an evolution over the 190, and hence they just called it a 190V. Not to say that, again, the 190 is no good. I mean, I'm absolutely impressed by how good it is. But bottom line for me, if funds allowed, get the 400. And also the other thing is that the 400 is such a good unit that should you in the future decide to upgrade to crazy speakers, the 400 will easily be in the same level of quality, whereas the 190 might compel you to do something more. So again, a small difference or relatively small difference at the beginning in terms of cost, but one that could last you a very, very long time to come. I'm not going to go into the music and so on. The guys have gone into quite a few, but that would be my conclusion. Any last words?
What I would say is, if you have a higher efficiency speaker, then I would say take the 190. If you could be looking for a now thing and go into changing speakers later on, definitely take the 400. I think it's in the long run, it's the better choice to make. Not because it's more expensive, but I always believe in speakers that, or the type of music what you play, which has dynamics, it will give you more for your money. That's my take.
We all love the 190. It does sound like that we're slamming the 190, but we do love the 190. It plays well with everything. There was just a noticeable difference, and it was again for me, it wasn't substantial, but I could hear it on every cut. Not just with the three that we chose, but I mean we listened to lots when we're doing these listening sessions.
We just choose to say three.
And you know what? Again, there were a lot of speakers hooked up while those two amps were in that room, and you could always tell. You could always tell the difference between the 190 and the 400. So yeah, if you have the means, the 400 could be a forever amp for a lot of people. And yeah, because it plays well with every speakers, when you do upgrade speakers, you won't have any issues with the 400.
All right, well, we all liked the 400 more than the 190, which is, boy, the poor 190.
No, it's a great amp.
It's so good.
It is, yeah.
It's just the 400 just is better.
Yeah.
And so it should. It's more money. It's the big brother. Anyway, I implore you, if you get a chance, please go and compare it for yourself. And then please, in the comments below, let me know what you think. Let us know what you think. We all of us read your comments, and we all love it when, as a community, we share with each other. And of course, if you've heard other things that you prefer, by all means, put it in. It just because we like the Hegel doesn't mean that you have to like the Hegel, and we can all learn from each other. Anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.